Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Lau with Kenshan Crafts. Today I am going to be sharing with you these two very special exclusive inks from Atlas Stationers. So this is Colorverse Wolf Point and Wearingeul Atlas, and these two are still available at Atlas, except that Wolf Point is actually on sale for half off. So if you are interested in this ink, definitely go and get yourself a full bottle. I think it's about $11 or $10. That's a great deal. So, and this is a 30 milliliter bottle, while the Wearingeul Atlas is also 30 milliliters. All right, and then I have them inked up in these pens with different nib sizes to show you the difference that a nib size or a wet or drier pen will show off the ink properties differently. And then I also mixed the two inks together because why not? And I also found that one of them, like Wearingeul Atlas, is a lovely, lovely muted dusty blue, that's still saturated, and Wolf Point is a darker green, and so I thought that if I mix them together, I would create this gorgeous teal that I love so much. So let's get started. I have my 52 GSM Tomoe river paper here, and my Kakimori nib to show you the swatches. So let's first start off with Wolf Point because that one came out first. Atlas created Wolf Point back, I think, like the end of 2023. And it is this lovely green, and it's quite blue too for a green. So, wow. All right, yes. So I'm gonna do one pass, and then two passes, that will hopefully just help you see the difference. Okay, and then the different lines. So this is Colorverse Wolf Point. Yeah, you can see that it's a really dark, not so dark, but it's quite a saturated dark forest green, but it's got some blue, hint of blue in there, and I love this color so much. I think that I used it in a finer nib, that's why I didn't like it as much out of the finer nib, but in a broader nib, you'll see this is really pretty. So gorgeous. All right, so as we let that dry, we're going to now take a look at how it writes in these different nibs. I have Wolf Point inked up in my Edison Collier from Edison Pen Co., and it was a collaboration with Atlas Stationers. I love this so much. It's such a gorgeous, like, very tealy color mixed with whites and got lots of sparkles. So this has a fine nib, and it writes really well with shimmer inks. I put my favorite dry Ferris wheel press ink in here, and it was so juicy out of this nib, and I just loved it. So Colorverse Point is not that dry, I would say. So this is my Edison Pen Co. Collier model, I think. And it's got a fine nib. Yeah, it's about medium wetness, so like it's really controlled, but it's dealing with this shimmer ink very well. And you can see here it is pretty thin, but it's also, it wrote smoothly and very wet out of this fine Yovo nib. Next up is a medium nib. This is the Bach nib by Kaweco, and it's a smooth writer. Bach nibs do write pretty well, and it's also a very tiny nib, so I'm not sure how well it's going to show off. So this is 2 Kaweco. Yeah, it's very smooth with a shimmer ink. Kaweco, this is the no, this is just the Sport. And this is a medium nib. You can already tell, just as I'm writing, that this medium nib is definitely thicker than the Edison Collier Fine, and it's showing off darker tone of this ink. You can see these lines up here that you get this light shade of blue-green, and then you can get that really dark, it's almost like black, but this isn't broad enough to get you that black shade up there. And it's also sheening too now. So I'll look at all the properties later once it's dry with you guys. Okay, so this is the medium nib. Yeah, it's very controlled, as you can see here. It's wet but controlled. It's not terribly wet. And then the last one here is my Lamy AL. Oh my gosh, what are these called again? The Lamy All-Star? Yes, the Lamy All-Star. And this is my Cosmic. So I know it's Cosmic and not the Rose Gold because the clip here is silver. The Rose Gold one will have a Rose Gold clip. All right, so I have a cursive nib in here. I'm not sure why they call it the cursive nib because I can write cursive with any nib. And cursive nibs write really wet and a little broader, so let's see, yeah. So that is pretty wet, and the color is a lot darker. So this is a Lamy All-Star. Cursive. Okay. So it's also showing not to be terribly wet, but you can see that the color difference here, it's wet enough that it's giving off the darker tones of this green color. So if you have a wetter nib, you're definitely going to see these darker tones. If you want to see the lighter shades as you're writing, you're going to have to write a little slower to see the different kinds of shading. All right, so that was Colorverse Wolf Point. Now let's take a look at Wearingeul Atlas. I love Wearingeul's ink bottles. However, I will have to say that Wearingeul and Colorverse are two of the most expensive inks out there. They are inks made from South Korea, so I mean, they're the most expensive for how much you get because they are priced around the same point as almost all inks. Most inks these days are between like $17 and $25, but averaging around 20 to 22. And so they are pricing all of their inks around the same price point, so $22, but you're getting 30 milliliters instead of 50 milliliters. Most of the older ink bottles are 50 mils, but these ones are between 25 to 30. And I forgot, Dominant Industry is also one of the ones way up there. For 25 milliliters, you're paying the same price as like the rest of these. Okay, Wearingeul Atlas. I was afraid that this would be a very light ink, but it's not that light. It is pretty legible. But it definitely is on the like a muted blue side of things, and I do quite like it. I thought that it would also be a blue that I wouldn't like, but I was wrong. It's a blue I like. But you can tell that it is kind of dry. Well, I can tell that it's kind of dry, and so I will tell you that it is kind of dry. It's not the most wet, but it's also not like terribly dry either. It performs out of my pens just fine. Okay. This is Wearingeul. Atlas. Yeah, this blue, once it's dry, it is magical. It's got green shimmers in it, and it's a dusty blue color as the ink base. Now, I forgot to say, Colorverse has silver shimmers in it, and you know the base color is a foresty green with some blue undertones. And Wearingeul Atlas, once it dries, it just like the green pops up. Also, the shimmer is also green too, so it's really interesting. This ink, Wearingeul always makes really interesting inks. They're like kind of on par with Ferris Wheel inks in terms of like being creative and innovative, but not the most useful for your pens. I will say that Wearingeul is about the same in that regard. A lot of Wearingeul inks I can't use. They're just way too light, but this one is great. All right, so let's switch over to the other inks, or the other pens. So I will start off with my Leonardo Momento Magico, which means magic moment. And this is this Emerald or Smeraldo. It is a piston filler, and it's got an ink window in here to show you how much ink you have left. I didn't put too much in any of my pens here, just so that I can show it to you guys before I clean it. So this has an elastic extra fine, which is pretty close to a Jowo fine. Let's see, so Leonardo, Momento Magico. You'll find that the Leonardo extra fines are quite scratchy because they are very thin, but I don't mind that. It's not that scratchy. It's very loud feedback, but it writes really smoothly. So this is an elastic extra fine. Just going to do that, and then here is my wetness test. The swatch is further down, which means that this ink comes out of this nib pretty wet. So this Momento Magico is not the driest extra fine. Okay, so next up is a fine. This is my Lamy All-Star Blue-Green, and I have a fine nib in here. I have multiple nib sizes, so I just chose a fine because I have an extra fine, a fine, and then a medium here. So 2. And for some reason this Lamy fine is very thin, so it writes almost like the extra fine up here. And it's very scratchy. I hate it. I think this is the fine that I bought from Endless Pens like 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And it was so scratchy, I did not like it. And I'm seeing now that it is the nib, not just the ink. Fine. It's very dry. Super, super dry. Okay. And then we have my Leonardo Momento Zero blue. This is the blue Aloha. It's such a beautiful pen. I love it so much. My friend Min and I, we were talked about like me selling this to him because I don't use it as much. But then I kept looking at it and I'm just like, it's so beautiful. And that's the reason why I got it. And it's still beautiful. I still have a really, really close meaning that this pen has for me. So I told him, I'm sorry, I can't part with it. You know, and he said, that's okay. I can just find it on Goldspot or somewhere. And there are still sales on this pen out there. So, and I have this in a medium nib. At first it was a lot thinner and more like a cursive italic, but now it's kind of just like a regular medium nib. Or maybe not. I mean, maybe it's still the same. It's just the ink changes its property. All right, so this is Leonardo. Momento Zero. Medium. Yeah, this medium nib is very wet. Now the swatches here are very light just because this ink does get to be very, very, very light. As you can see as the ink is drying. On wetter pens or like when it pools, you can see the green coming out, but when it's not, if it's a dry pen, you will not see a lot of the green because the green only comes out once it's very wet, it pools. It is the shimmer, but I think it is also the ink as well. Now, I'm not seeing a lot of shimmer. Maybe didn't shake my pen so well, but the shimmer is not as prominent here. It is quite prominent if you shake and you get the right amount of shimmer in your pens. But otherwise, like I'm seeing in my broader medium nib here that it is just this lovely dusty blue, and we'll wait for it to dry it. So while we wait, let's then take a look at this mixture that I made. Now, when you make mixtures of inks, you know, just a caution that it may or may not be the best to put in your expensive pens. So try it in your cheaper pens, because when you mix two inks together, you're not sure what the properties are going to be, if they're going to be safe or not. Okay, this is lovely. Just look at that. Muted teal, like green teal. Oh, wow. So lovely. Definitely want this in my pen. Yeah, this is the ink that, the ink tone that came out of my pen the other day when I tested this. I loved that so much. Wolfpoint X Atlas. So this was a 1-to-1 ratio. You can put 2 Atlas to 1 Wolfpoint so that you can see more blue, because the Wearingeul Atlas is a lot lighter than a Colorverse Wolfpoint. But I do like this color. This is the ink tone that I like. So I'll just show you what I meant by, like, so if you can see, I don't know if you can really tell, but the very bottom Leonardo Momentum Magico in regular print here is the actual Atlas ink, and then the Momentum Magico right here is a little bit greener. So I liked this tone, but then I believe it was just the tiniest bit of Colorverse Wolfpoint, so it's still very blue. But here it's a very green, and this is the one I prefer. So I think that once this dries, it's going to have the shimmer qualities of both of them, which is really interesting. All right, so let's zoom in and take a look at the qualities of the Colorverse ink. Yes, so the Wolfpoint is showing some sheen. Yeah, it's like either black or red. Yeah, I can't see that it's completely red, so it might just be a bit of a black sheen, but it is haloing on the outside, which is really pretty. Yeah, you can see over here too. And then of course the Lamy All-Star is showing you more of that black, darker green, and then if you look at the Kaweco Sport there, it's almost like blue shimmers, but I think it's silver. It's so pretty. Yeah, the silver shimmer here, I just love it so much. It's so pretty with this deep forest green teal. Okay, so there's Wolfpoint for you. Just look at that. It's gorgeous silver shimmer. And again, like, it's not terribly dry of an ink, so it's handling, my fine and mediums are handling it really well. Your wetter nibs are going to definitely show it off really well as well. And then let's look at Wearingeul Atlas. Now that ink is so magical. You know me, I love teals, blues, and greens. You know, well, especially when you mix the two together. And this ink kind of is that. It's an embodiment of this gorgeous light blue. You can see that the very light passes of blue that you'll get is very similar to the finer nibs. And when it's wetter, it has this gorgeous green that just floats out, but it's also the shimmers. So I think it's a mixture between the ink's property as well as the shimmer coming out. And then if you look at my Leonardo medium here, you can see the green sheen trying to, or not, the green shimmer trying to pop out there. But I don't see too much of the shimmer on that medium nib. It might not be the wettest of a medium nib, so it's not showing that green, or maybe I just didn't get a good amount of shimmer in there. I mean, that's most likely the issue. Okay. Let me just do that so that we can see it. But yeah, that Atlas ink, gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. If you have a medium broad nib that is very wet, you're gonna get these magical notes of green in there. Otherwise, if you like a dusty blue, you're gonna get that out of your finer nibs, and you can see in my Leonardo extra fine here that it's shading so well. So because it's finer and it's slightly drier because it's finer, you'll get great amounts of shading. Now it can get a little too hard to read if it's too thin. So let's say if you have a Sailor Fine or a Platinum Fine, and I do not recommend using these shimmer inks in a Sailor Fine or Extra Fine. It's just not great. You can if you want to, but I don't recommend that. But the Extra Fine is a Yovo, and this is very fine to me, I think, and it's showing great shading. The Lamy All-Star Fine is basically the same line width as the Extra Fine Yovo up there. All right, I didn't have any broads to put this in, but I'm sure it would look so gorgeous coming out of a broad. This is basically a broad up here, so like take this as a broad. All right, and then the Wearingeul Atlas mixture, just look at that. That silver shimmer is popping through. I don't see a lot of the green shimmer. Now I think because I mixed them, the properties have changed. You don't see this gorgeous green because most of this is already green. This is already kind of green. So the green shimmer from Atlas is being masked by the color of the ink. So yeah, if you mix it, you'll lose this very magical green, but otherwise I love the base color here. It's so nice. Alrighty, you guys, I think that is all for my video today. I hope that this ink swatching and writing samples with different nib sizes is helpful for you to see the qualities of the ink coming out of different nibs and what you can expect for the specific nib sizes that you use, because I know everybody's a little different with what nib sizes we choose to use. And let me know down in the comments which one of these inks, Atlas special exclusive inks, that you like more. Are you a green or are you a blue person? Personally, for me, I am more in between, so that's why I created this. But I just think that Wearingeul Atlas is one of the most unique looking dusty blue with green shimmers. Like, you don't see that a lot, so this is very, very unique to me. I love this so much. And I think a very similar color to Wearingeul Atlas is Colorverse Alpha Gemini, but that one it's a dusty blue with pink shimmers. And so for the base color, I think it's pretty similar to that Colorverse ink. As for Wolf Point, I think this color is pretty similar to, I'm not quite sure, because a lot of the inks in my mind here are more green and doesn't have any of this blue undertone that I'm seeing here. Like, if you're not seeing the blue undertone, once you put this Colorverse Wolf Point next to a true green, it doesn't look green. So that's just how I know. So yeah, I personally love them both. I mean, I have them both, and it is thanks to you guys who use my Atlas affiliate code and affiliate link that I was able to purchase these two to share with you guys. I do apologize I didn't show this sooner, but here it is. Now you can get Wolf Point for half off. Perfect time to get that. And Wearingeul Atlas is still available. Gorgeous, gorgeous blue ink if you love blue. Okay, so I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for joining me here, and have a wonderful week. Bye.